What's up, Earth Rockers? It's your boy Shovatar here. I am back. I am back after a very brief hiatus, which most of you probably didn't even notice. There was actually a very slight interruption in my upload schedule, but the point is that I'm back now. I'm back with a video that I didn't really expect to be making all the way back in October, but which I made anyway, which has a lot of downtime, so I'm just going to let this thing get started. Okay, so this is a Simon's Quest speedrun, which Simon's Quest was a game that I had marginal interest in and certainly no interest in speedrunning until about maybe 2 or 3 months ago when I decided to just give it a shot because my initial goal had been to go back and re-record a bunch of Castlevania 3 footage that I had. But then once I got all that, I thought, you know what? I have so much like NES Castlevania muscle memory, like I might as well do the whole NES trilogy and try to find, try to get something out of it. And when I like investigated Simon's Quest, investigated like what would be some interesting things to do with it, I discovered that it was actually very engaging. Simon's Quest is a difficult game to evaluate in the year 2025 because all of the Castlevania games are products of their time in some sense. Most of them are only products of their time in the sense of the genre, like side-scrolling action platformer. But Simon's Quest is a product of its time in sort of its baseline design philosophy. Where there's a very brief period of time where a game being cryptic intentionally was sort of a major selling point. And the idea was like you'd unravel the mystery, and the fact that things didn't make sense or were difficult to decipher wasn't exactly a problem. It was more of like, that's the point of the game, and then you buy guides and you talk to kids on the playground to figure out, what the mystery is, what the riddle of Dracula is all collectively describe all the weird cryptic shit in Simon's Quest from this point onward. But that doesn't really like carry over to the year 2025 if you're trying to play this game for the first time, because most people don't like the idea of wandering around for hours, like bumping their head against things and like trying shit out to see what works. Some people do, but the point that I'm getting at is that Simon's Quest is more so a product of its time than the other games in the franchise, and therefore is more difficult to evaluate as a game. As a speedrun game, though, or as like a challenge game, it's, in my opinion, extremely interesting because it's really just all about the routing. It's all about figuring out, like, when you're going to do certain things. And I should explain what's going on here, because this footage is going to be pretty goddamn boring for a while. And that ties into what I mean when I talk about routing. So Simon's Quest routing is built around the day-night cycle. And the day-night cycle is important because not certain shops, all shops are only open during the day. And you need to go to certain shops to get certain quest vital items to progress in the game's storyline. And so you don't want to end up in a position where like you get to a town and then it's nighttime and you can't do anything, or you get to a town like right when night falls and you can't buy what you need to buy. So a Simon's Quest route is based around getting to certain towns during the day and then using the nighttime to either farm, which is what I'm doing now, or to traverse the world. The reason I'm farming right now has to do with a particular vagary of the damageless route, which is that typically in like a regular any percent or even 100% Castlevania speedrun, the very first thing you would do is go left out of the starting town here, Jorah, and farm these big, mean lizard monsters called salamanders to get up to 100 hearts before the first night starts. The reason you have to do that is because you need both the holy water and the white crystal from the first town. Those are both absolutely essential quest necessary, like main quest necessary items that you have to get, and you also, for the sake of efficiency, pretty much have to get them right at the start because it just doesn't make sense to backtrack and like get them later, because you need the holy water to get into certain shops, to get other stuff you want. You need the white crystal to clear the first and second mansions. You basically need to leave this town with both of those items, and if you don't farm the salamanders, you can't like get enough hearts to, I mean, I think it might technically be possible with like perfect RNG, but like it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. The reason you don't do the salamander farm on a damageless run is because you can't avoid taking damage from the first two salamanders that spawn when you go to the left. So you have to spend the first night farming because you need to get out of the town with both the holy water and the white crystal, and you just can't get enough hearts to get both of those things without the salamander farm. So that's fortunate for me because I hate the salamander farm, which I'll talk more about later. it's kind of hard to describe without showing it, but it's extremely difficult. It's extremely precise. You have to kill enemies like very quickly in like a very particular position. If you're curious, like look it up. It probably won't look that hard, but if you read about the mechanics of it, it'll be obvious why it's like such a gigantic problem. But because I can't do the salamander farm, I have to spend the first night farming. And my hope with this first night of farming is that I come out with enough hearts to not only get the holy water in here, but also the chain whip on the way to the next major town. And you might be wondering, how did I know when the night was going to be over? I literally just counted the ghost kills, and I counted the werewolf kills at the start. You kill 22 werewolves at the start, then you do 48 waves of ghosts, and then you take however many hearts you get from there, and go on. And I will reset at this point if I feel like the heart count is bad enough. 180 is really good. You can get up to heart, if you're really lucky, you can get up to the heart cap on that first farm, which is 256, meaning after buying the holy water, you would come out with 206. But really, I only want, like, anything above, like, 175 was good. Anything above 150, like, I'll take. If it's below 150, I just won't take it, because I need to spend 150 hearts to get the next whip upgrade, on the way to the next major town. And then I want, like, it's just always better to be ahead of the heart count that you need. Just because, like, because of the routing, because of the way that it works, you can, like, get to a town when you want to get to a town, but if you've been unlucky with heart drops, you could get there without enough hearts to buy what you want to buy. So it's just like, it's like sometimes that'll just happen to you. So you always want, if you can start off with like a good buffer, like more hearts than you technically need, that's, you know, obviously better than not having that. So when I say major town, I mean the next town with like a quest essential item. This first town that I'm going to come up with here is not like a major town, but it's a very important town in the context of a Simon's Quest route, because this is where you get the first whip upgrade. There's technically an earlier whip upgrade you can get in the starting town, but it's really not worth getting because it's 100 hearts, which is like, you know, and you can just come right in here and get this thing on the way to the next town, because this is right on the way to the next town. So there's not really ever any reason, as far as I can tell, to get that first whip upgrade in the first town. There might be some stipulation you could give yourself that would make that make sense, but that never made sense in any of the routes that I ever put together. And I put together a lot of routes, but I mostly put together routes for a 100% run, which I'll upload after this. The damageless route is pretty simple because you can't do the salamander farm, and then you can't. This is an interesting deviation. I actually kind of forgot that this happened, which is why I was a little bit taken aback. But yeah, I'm remembering now. So there are 5 mansions in Simon's Quest, but you don't have to do them in order. You can technically do them in any... Well, actually, no, you can't technically do them in any order. You can do the first 2 in any order, then you can do the last 3 in any order. Usually, though, the order will be like 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, or 2, 1, 3, 5, 4. I've never really heard of a different one than those 2. And then I'll get into why that is. It has to do with where the mansions are positioned and where the whip upgrades are positioned. But the reason that I'm not going straight to the second mansion, which is what you would typically do in like an optimized route, is because I want more hearts than I have when I get to the second town. I'm actually going to pause a little bit to explain this. So under normal circumstances, quote-unquote normal circumstances, you would go straight from Veros, which is the town with the chain whip, to Algiba, which is the town with the blue crystal, which lets you access the second mansion. Then you do the second mansion. Then you would do the first mansion on the way back to the starting town, which is where you get to the rest of the game. But the reason I'm not doing that has to do with the damageless route. I'm actually going to let this start again. The reason I'm not doing that has to do with the damageless route. I want to get to Algiba with a lot of hearts, because I have a lot of stuff that I want to buy there. I want to buy 2 bundles of laurels, which give you temporary invincibility. And there's not really a way around that, because there's 2 places in the game where you can buy laurels. Technically, I think there's 3, but there's 2 places where like you would naturally end up buying them on a normal route. And one of them is after the third mansion, quote unquote after, as in like, whenever I talk about something being after something else, it means like in a natural route, that's sort of the order they would go in, and the only way you could alter that is through backtracking, which you want to do as little of as possible for, you know, obvious reasons of efficiency. Anyway, so there's one town you can buy laurels that's after the third mansion, but this is the only time you can buy laurels before the third mansion, and that's particularly important because the third mansion in a no damage run is like a gigantic problem. It's like where your run is going to die, especially if you're doing this glitchless like I am. And I'll explain why that is when I get there, but it has to do with, like, you're put in a situation where the enemies basically need to behave in a certain way in order for you to not get hit. And if you go into that mansion with 4 laurels, you can mitigate some of that problem by giving yourself invincibility during some of those areas and not just relying on, like, RNG. So technically, I guess technically optional, but it's always better to be safe with something like this. Actually, no, it's not. It's not technically optional. I think you do need. I think you would. Yeah, no. Now I'm remembering. Yeah. Sorry, I probably should have gone over this in my head before I actually started recording and before trucks started driving by outside. But the problem with buying laurels later in the run is that you just, like, don't really have enough hearts. The town where you... The day where you would have access to the second laurel merchant is the same day that you need to buy the last whip upgrade, which is, like, 200 hearts. So, like... And you can only carry 256 hearts at a time, so, like, you don't really have enough heart allowance to buy more laurels later in the run, so, like, you have to buy 2 of them here. The reason you won't see other damageless runs doing this is because they will use glitches to traverse the third mansion in a way that lets them avoid some otherwise unavoidable damage. So this is an issue that's very specific to my, like, additional stipulation of no glitches, which most damageless runs are not glitchless. And glitches in Simon's Quest are very, very important. They can save you a ton of time because they involve, like, wrong warping and basically traversing the environments in a way that the game doesn't intend, which is a great way to just save time in every speedrun. is to just, like, move more, is to, like, fall through blocks or, like, jump through walls or, you know, things like that. Which I don't have, like, I don't know, I just... You know, it's funny because some people think of glitches as, like cheating or, like, unfair, but it's honestly easier to play these games without learning glitches, because glitches are usually really, really hard to, like, effectively execute. So it's sort of like me giving myself a break, but it's also kind of a philosophical thing. I don't really like using glitches on, like, a YouTube channel, because I often envision people, like, watching these videos to, like, see how something works or, like, try to overcome a certain problem in a game, and, like, I feel like including a bunch of, like, prohibitively difficult glitches is sort of, like, defeats the point of that. Which is why I, you know, even though this is technically a speedrun and I am uploading these things to speedrun.com, I don't really think of myself as a speedrunner, because philosophically I'm more concerned with, like, other things besides just how fast it is. But and I'm not as good at the game. I'm not as good at the games that I play as real speedrunners are. Anyway, so this is the second night. This is me going to the second town. You can get to the second town from Veros with the chain whip before the second night, although it's very close, and you'll see me do that in the next video that I upload. And the reason you would do that is just to make sure that you can talk to an NPC here during the second day, and then spend the second night getting to the second mansion. But here I don't do that because I need more hearts. So I clear out the mansion, and then I spend the rest of the night farming. So that's how that is. And again, that's just because I basically want to be heart capped at the conclusion of this farm. Because I want to buy laurels, and then I want to be, like, ahead. I want to buy laurels here, and then I also want to buy 2 oak stakes in the second mansion. You'll notice in the first mansion I bought an oak stake to throw at that orb and get the item, but you don't have to buy. You can buy as many oak. You can hold 1 oak stake at a time. So there's nothing stopping you in a mansion from buying an oak stake, using it, then going back to the same merchant in the mansion and getting a second oak stake and holding onto that for the next mansion. Usually people do that in the third mansion because the merchant is positioned in a place that makes it, like, it doesn't take you any time to talk to him again after you hit the orb. But I do it for the second mansion for the same reason that I'm getting both of these laurels here and kind of, like, fucking with the route and slowing myself down, is because of the heart capacity. Because on the 4th day I need to get the red crystal and buy the morning star. So, and buy more laurels. So I need to spend 250 hearts on the 4th day, which means that like I have to get to the town with the red crystal, like, you know, as close to hard cap as possible. So that's why this route is like a little bit strange. Not that that'll mean anything to any of you who haven't seen other Simon's Quest videos or Simon's Quest routes, but I'm just trying to like explain why there's all this boring footage of me killing ghosts over and over again and what's ostensibly a speed run. It's because this is just what the route demands. So it is inefficient, but it's the best option I have available to me, unfortunately, given all of the parameters. So this is bad because I don't count ghosts for the second farm. For the first farm, I counted ghosts. For the second farm, I don't count ghosts. I just keep track of how many hearts I have and then stop when I get to the max, which is 256. But here, the farm was bad and I didn't get to 256, which means I wasted time walking down the stairs to get to that doorway. Normally, like ideally, I would get to 256 on that farm, walk down in front of the door, and enter as soon as the day changed. But obviously that's not what happened. So, and that's like an important thing to mention, is that even if you go out of your way to farm to like make sure you have good heart count, which is what I'm doing here, sometimes you still just get unlucky and you still have to just hope to get a better heart count later on. So there's RNG in this run in terms of enemy behavior in the third mansion and in a couple of other places, but there's also RNG in the sense of just like basic heart drop rates and like, are you going to have what you need to have when you need to have it? So that's just a thing about the run that's like annoying and inconsistent. So yeah, here's the guy that you need to talk to get the blue crystal. The reason I didn't immediately walk over to the left when the day changed is because the NPCs here actually won't spawn. If you're out here at night and the day changes, the NPCs won't spawn until you enter a building and leave it again, which is why I went and bought the laurels before going up and talking to that guy, because that guy didn't exist. You might have noticed that the NPC in front of the shop didn't actually appear until I went in the shop and came back in. And I'm not sure why that is, because that's not the case with every town in the game. In the town with the red crystal, for example, excuse me, the guy who gives you the red crystal will show up if you just like walk away from him, then towards him again, he'll like spawn in. But here it's different. Pretty annoying, honestly, because it would be more convenient to end the farm or to end the night where the blue crystal guy is, and then do the big walk back instead of like going down the stairs and back up the stairs, which is what you have to do here. And stairs are like a major killer in speedruns. Like if you can avoid taking the stairs, you should do it in pretty much every NES. In all the NES Castlevania games that have stairs, because it just takes a long time to get up them, and you don't really notice it until you compare like footage of you taking the stairs and footage of you not taking the stairs, and you're like, wow, that's a tremendous time save. So stairs are kind of your enemy. And if you can avoid going up and down them more than once, and that's what you should try to do. So the basic route is starting town, farm, Viros, Chain Whip, first mansion, Algeba, farm, second mansion, and then the rest of the route is pretty much straightforward. Because you don't really... Like, the problem... Once you get to the third mansion, there's not really much route variation. But at the very beginning of the game, you have, like, 2 mansions you can do in any order, and you have the... Like, when do I get the Chain Whip? Or, like, not when do I get the Chain Whip, but, like... When should I go to Algeba? Like, should I go to Algeba first and do the second mansion first? Or should I do the first mansion first? There's, like, reasons to do both of those things. But really, most of the routing issues are over by the time you get to the third mansion. The only other thing you have to worry about is making sure that it's daytime when you get to the red crystal town, because you would ideally want to get the red crystal and get the morning star on the same day. That's an important thing you would need to do, which would mean you would need to have enough hearts, like I've said before, to have enough hearts to get the laurels in the red crystal town and the morning star in the next town, and also like do everything quickly enough that you can get the red crystal in the first town, get through the intervening areas to the town after that, and like Just make sure you get everything in the same day. So that's the last like routing problem. That's not going to happen till later. And if this is all sounding like, if you can't really like follow what I'm talking about, I'll point it out as I get to it. I'm just trying to describe like the overall route of the game and what the major timing routing issues are. Fun fact: time does not pass inside of mansions or inside of town or inside of shops. It does pass inside of towns. So you don't have to worry about how quickly you're going through the mansions or anything like that, but you do have to worry about how quickly you're getting through the outdoor areas and how quickly you're navigating around the towns. So here is the first example of like the biggest problem in a damageless run, which is, as you might have noticed, the Spear Knight is like kind of patrolling near the stairs, and here he barely doesn't kill me. I was literally like stuck there and I had to stop and whip, and fortunately he stopped his charge right before he hit me. And like that situation right there with a Spear Knight on top of a staircase is like, that happens in the third mansion 1, 2, 3 times, and then a similar thing happens like 2 more times. So there's a bunch of situations like that in the third mansion, which is why it's such a huge problem. And some of those, and the strat is to basically do what I did back there, which is to stand off to the right and then bait them over and then hope they don't like charge towards you on the way up the stairs, and hope that you can just get like to the left of them, because they'll either slowly back away from you or quickly charge towards you, and there's no like pattern to it really. It's all RNG. So the best you can do is like bait them over to one side and then hope that they behave, unfortunately. This mansion's pretty funny because there's a whole other like section of this mansion that you literally never see if you know where to go. That's part of the riddle of Dracula, is having gigantic areas of the game that are literally pointless. That's a fun little thing. If you jump out of a mansion, you'll like for some reason jump backwards out of the door when you're back in the overworld. So I'm not really too concerned about the only thing I'm really worried about in this run is my heart count, because like I keep mentioning, I need to get to the towns after the third mansion. I need to get to with good hearts. And the thing about a speed run is that you really shouldn't, you kind of just have to feel out your heart count, because you can't, like, every time you stop and pause the game to like check your inventory, you're obviously losing time. Oh, and also the fact that this is damageless is why I'm going to be playing like so super cautiously. A lot of the like stopping and whipping that I'm doing is not strictly necessary, but it's something that I'm doing just like, you know, just for the sake of safety. Because I really wanted to get this run finished. This was frustrating to get. I did not expect this to be as hard to get as it was. I only ever even considered getting Simon's Quest footage on like a whim. And so then the getting it on a whim turned into like a month of playing the game. Well, 3 weeks, because I was doing other things for a week. But it was really, really challenging, more so than I was expecting. Because the thing about Simon's Quest is that like once you're not like worrying about the cryptic, like mysterious shit, it's an incredibly easy game. Like you kind of need to give yourself like a time limit or a no damage stipulation to make the game engaging. But I think if you do that, the game does become really engaging, which is interesting, because a lot of people, myself included, tend to rank Simon's Quest pretty low on the the overall list of Castlevania games. But I honestly, like, I did just describe it as an ordeal, but I did have a lot of fun like playing this game and experimenting with all these different routes, and like just kind of going through these long wilderness sections and like destroying everything has a nice kind of rhythmic feel to it. It's a little bit like, I don't know, I can't think of any real... It's definitely very different from what, normal classic Castlevania feels like, because in normal classic Castlevania, every enemy is important. Here, you're just like tearing through everything. It's a lot like Symphony of the Night in that sense. Right down to being extremely easy if you don't give yourself any further stipulation. So this is just me going all the way back to the first town, and then from the first town to the left to the third mansion, which I'll have more to say about than I've had here. I should also talk about this fire sub-weapon that I got, because as far as I can tell, no damage runs usually don't pick up that fire weapon because it's only really, it's not strictly necessary, but it makes a certain area of the game that I'll point out when I get to it like really, really way more manageable, like way more manageable. Um, so I'll point that out when I get there. This is like, okay, that little sequence probably looked a little bit strange, but that's like the safest way to kill those first two salamanders. Those are the salamanders I was talking about before, and usually you can like kill them without taking damage with just the whip and the shield, but you have to time your whip swings really precisely, and I had lost several runs to like slightly mistiming the whips on those first two salamanders, and I just decided like I don't want to lose any more runs to this. I'm just gonna take the safest route that I can, and and just stun them with the Sacred Flame. That's not why I take the Sacred Flame, by the way. That is super helpful, but the reason I take the Sacred Flame is something in the third mansion, which is coming up right here, Brahms Mansion. Okay, this place is a fucking nightmare, and I fucking hate it, and this is where, like, all my runs died, because here's the first Spear Knight at the top of a staircase, who I have to bait over here and then hope that he doesn't, like, RNG charge me to death. He behaves. Okay, good. Plus the enemies are taking 2 hits now because they get more health when you go further into the game. Here's a Spear Knight plus a blob at the top of the staircase, which means you can't bait. It's like much more risky to bait this guy by waiting on the left, because if you wait there for too long, then the blob will also like jump over to the stairs. So if he like, you just kind of have to take those stairs immediately in order to make sure that the blob can't get there. You just have to hope that the Spear Knight behaves himself, because unlike Spear Knights, the blobs will pretty much always go to right where you are. They will not back off. They will not leave. Although actually, maybe you could wait for it to like fly up in the air and despawn, but it's just like more complicated. So here is a optional laurel usage. This might seem like a similar problem to the Spear Knight at the top of the stairs from earlier, and it is, but like that devil at the top of the stairs is technically easier to kill than the Spear Knights are, because hang on, let me go back. Yeah, the devil, let me go back a little more. Yeah, okay, so this devil does look like he's hard to kill, and he is, but like you really just kind of have to wait for him to be far enough over onto the right that you can take one step up and whip him twice. It's not a huge deal to kill him, but I just skip him anyway because you can't do anything to like make the RNG better in your favor, which is what you can do with the Spear Knights. And the fact that you don't have to use a laurel here can like lead to these weird mind games where you're not clearing him because you're waiting for a safe moment to kill him, but then like the safe moment doesn't come, or you're not sure if it's totally safe or not, and you end up sitting there. I remember an earlier run I recorded, I literally sat here at the top of these stairs for like over a minute waiting for him to get into like a position that I liked. So I just figured, you know, I'll just save myself the mental self-sabotage and I'll just laurel through him, which is okay. You have one flex laurel you can use here. So this is the part that I use the Sacred Flame for, because if you don't kill those guys with the Sacred Flame, your choices are either throw holy water down on them, which takes forever. This is also a really good use of the Sacred Flame to kill that guy. Or try to jump down and fight those 2 devils, which is not like a winning proposal. So I want to okay, so the reason why I do this little maneuver is because what I want to do is I want to fall down from that platform, but if you don't like keep him controlled, he can charge you while you're falling and like hit you like right here or like close to right there. So throwing the Sacred Flame there stun locks him, keeps him in place, so that way you can fall safely. And that's the kind of thing that you just have to do when you're doing a no damage route, because it just makes, like, you just have to take every, you have to eliminate every potential point of failure that you can. People who use glitches skip the 2 devils and skip, they skip the 2 devils somehow, I forget how. But they don't really worry about those guys. Now it's the death fight. Now death is also technically optional, but I kill him anyway because he drops a really powerful stuff. This is another thing, by the way, that the damageless runs don't do. Damageless runs usually don't bother killing the Grim Reaper. I do, because the sub-weapon he drops makes the one other boss fight in the game much more consistent, and makes the Dracula fight at the end faster, and makes the last stretch of the game from the last mansion to Dracula much, like, not much easier, but like faster. It comes, even though like you do have to take the time to kill death, and it does introduce another point of failure, and I did lose a couple of runs to screwing up the Grim Reaper fight. It ultimately saves time, and it turns the other boss from like an RNG check into a skill check, which I'll explain in further detail when I get to it. So now here's the third Spear Knight standing on top of a staircase in Brahms Mansion. And again, it's like you just have to bait him to the right and then hope he doesn't charge, because if he does, you have to fucking go back down and bait him all over again. And this is the kind of thing that, like, oh my fucking god, this guy is unbelievable. God. This is so frustrating to watch. What the hell is he doing? I don't remember this being this bad. I knew this guy took a while. I didn't remember it being this bad. I think I might have peaked my microphone. I'll have to edit that down in post-production, as they say. And that was pretty risky to take that jump there. I don't think I necessarily meant to do that, but it worked out. You just wait until he's far enough back, and then you jump and whip twice. What's nice in all Castlevania games, and what encourages you to get aggressive in all Castlevania games, is the whip hit stun, and that's especially effective with like enemies that can potentially charge like that. This laurel is basically non-negotiable. It's essentially impossible to get up that staircase without using a laurel. Get up that staircase without taking damage and without using a laurel. It just can't really be done. So that's like the one element of the route that kind of messes up everything else, because it means you need not only a laurel for the lava on route to level 3 after the salamanders, but you also now need a second laurel to get past the devils. Again, glitch runs don't have that problem because they avoid the devil using glitches. I don't have that luxury. So I basically need an extra laurel, and because you can only buy laurels in bunches of 2, that means I basically need to buy one more set of laurels than I otherwise would. Which does give me an extra laurel for like flexible usage, but also means I need to spend another 50 hearts that I otherwise wouldn't need to spend late in the run, which like impacts everything else. So it's so funny how just that one part of the game basically transforms like the entire rest of the route because of its impact on like the heart economy and what you need to have and when you need to have it. So that's the kind of thing, and that's the kind of thing about Simon's Quest that's interesting to me, is that like tiny little things like that can have these massive implications for the rest of the run. So Damageless, that's why Damageless was fun to... Damageless plus Glitchless was fun to figure out, because that, I don't think... People probably have done that before, but all like the runs that I watched were like using glitches, so I had to kind of feel my way through a lot of this stuff. Very fun. Very fun. I guess I do have kind of like a Luddite aversion towards glitches. So you can go further over to the left and farm ghosts here if you want, but I don't have time to do that. I'm expecting the day to switch like any moment now. And because I'm coming out of Brahms Mansion with like about 150 or 170 hearts, and I'm going to spend 50 here, so that means that I'm going to probably get the red crystal with 120 hearts, and I need 200 hearts by the time I get to the next town. So I need to buy the laurels here, then I need to farm, then I need to go to the next town. So that means that my timing here is very tight. It means that I don't have time to like mess around to the left side of the town and then go back up and get the laurels. I have to just get the laurels immediately. Plus I wouldn't even have time to like farm anything because I know the day is about to switch here. So a weird thing happens here. Okay, you probably didn't even see it, but for like 3 frames there, I like lagged in place, and that's why I stopped for a second there. Like I stopped for like 1 second on the way out of the store because I thought like my movement key got stuck or something, but you probably didn't even notice it. But there's like some weird emulator lag for like literally like 3 frames right after I talked to the merchant, and I was kind of nervous about that because that like never happens. And I was afraid it would like mess with the recording, but everything turned out fine. So I didn't see exactly how many hearts that I had coming in here. I think I saw 164. Let's see. Okay, yeah, that's probably right. And what's tricky is that the big glowing knife that you get from death costs 2 hearts to use per shot, so you can't go too hard with it, even though it is really good. And then in order to get out of here, I'm going to switch to the Sacred Flame again after I do this farm, which also costs hearts to use, though that only costs 1 heart to use. So even though I only need 200 at the end of all this, I'm also like spending hearts to get through it, so I have to sort of monitor that. But now I'm safe. Once I've gotten like 2, okay, now I'm getting all these heart pickups from the blobs. I know I'm pretty much safe to just spam the Sacred Flame to my heart's content, but that's why I didn't stop farming the aliens back there just because I got to 200. I kept going for a little bit because I knew that I would need to use some hearts to get through all those blobs, and those blobs are like so dangerous. That's like the last place in the run where you can really easily lose the run is with those blobs. Because you just never know what they'll do. They might take some weird angle, or they'll like spawn halfway in the floor, which means when they jump at you, they're not jumping at like the angle you would expect them to be at, and it's just like a total fucking nightmare. I remember losing a couple runs to stuff like that, which is also why the golden knife is good, because the golden knife lets you kill the first 2 blobs you get after the red crystal sound, like pretty much 100% consistently. Whereas otherwise you'd have to like walk up to them and do the like, oh god, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Dance. Or like the jumping and spamming Sacred Flame stuff, which is what I used to get through the second field of slimes, which is imprecise. But the good news is that after you're past the slimes, the rest of the run is pretty easy. There's not really anything that can go wrong in terms of ending the run at this point. It's pretty much just a question of like, am I going to execute on the second boss correctly, and then am I going to execute the last run to Dracula correctly? Those are the 2 big, and that's not like a life or death finishing the run or not finishing the run thing. That's just like a what time am I going to get thing. And I did give myself an informal goal time here of sub 47, which I did barely hit. So even though this run does have some stuff that's not good, like that one Spear Knight who just wouldn't fucking cooperate in Brahm's Mansion, I'm still happy with it, because for everything that went wrong, like something went right. I didn't farm to heart cap on the second farm, and then that Spear Knight didn't behave, but everything else went pretty much fine. And really, you just kind of got to take what you can get in a run like this, in a game like this, where so much of your success or failure is dependent on like cumulative, specific RNG factors, and then also cumulative RNG factors. I picked sub 47 because there was a previous run that I had done that was like 47-27 or something, and that was before I implemented the golden knife, and I knew the golden knife would probably save around like 30 seconds, so I knew that all said and done. And plus that run had some other like bad things in it, but basically sub 47 felt feasible, and so that was my goal, and I got it, which is very good. These fire guys are really scary because it's hard to describe. You basically just need to kill them really quickly, because when you are in a position to kill them, whenever you're in a position to kill them, you are also in a position to get hit by them, because they'll shoot little fireballs at you. So your choice is to either kill them before they shoot the fireball, which is what the golden knife makes much easier, or wait until they shoot a fireball, then jump over it, which I think I'm going to do later on in the run. But this is actually a good time to talk about one of the big challenges that Damageless presents, which is that you can't take any damage from this big lava pool on the way to the 5th mansion. Typically, you would just get through this with 2 laurels. You would like take some damage on the first patch, then use the last 2 laurels to get through the second patch. That's not an option with Damageless. And an important thing to mention about Simon's Quest that I kind of glossed over is that like not taking damage significantly alters the nature of the run, because Simon's Quest has basically no penalties for dying. If you die, you just like end up right back where you were before you died. I think it might drain hearts or something, but the point is that dying in Simon's Quest isn't like a tremendous deal. So like you can just take a bunch of damage to tank. You can like tank a bunch of damage to get through shit, and then just like instantly respawn and keep going if you want. Especially late in the run, because even though I'm actually not sure if dying costs hearts, the thing is that after you get the Morning Star, hearts basically stop mattering, because the only things you have to buy anymore are oak stakes, which are 50 hearts a pop, which is pretty easy to just get naturally in the mansions unless you get unlucky and heart drops. And then that's it. So and then you have to spend hearts to use the golden knife on the boss coming up here, but other than that, like, hearts pretty much stop being a problem after the Morning Star. This is actually really funny, this thing that comes up here. So there's a specific way that I want to do this. Let me go back a bit. I forget how to do frame advance here, so I guess I won't do it. But typically, so the way that I go down these platforms is deliberate, where I want to basically, I want to land on the very right edge of this block here, then walk off of it to fall straight down, and then walk to the left and jump down. But that, of course, doesn't happen. And the reason it's important for me to do that, the reason why I don't want to go too far over to the right is because, as you can see, a spider has spawned. And I don't want that spider to exist because he's going to mess up my movement on that platform down there. I would like to set up my movement on that platform without worrying about the projectiles, but here the projectile gets shot right as I'm, like, getting ready to get onto the platform. So basically, like, okay, that projectile is going to go, like, right where I want to be. I guess I could have walked right off and ducked it, but at this point I'm really nervous because, number one, this is close to the end of the run, and I've been trying to get this footage for a while, and number two, like, this is not part of the plan. This is unexpected. That spider shouldn't be there, and I shouldn't be dealing with this, so I just, like, didn't... I kind of panicked, and my snap decision was to walk backwards and try to whip it, but hitting the attack button made me talk to this guy again, who I actually should have mentioned this. This guy completely refills your laurels, which is extremely important because it means that you can just come back out of the mansion really easily. You don't have to worry about, like, buying more laurels at some point. And the max number of laurels you can hold is 4. So he basically gives you 4 laurels, which is perfect because that's exactly the number you need to get from here to the end of the game without taking any damage, because there's the long lava pools after this mansion on the way out of it, and then there's one more lava pool before Dracula. So 4 is, like, the perfect number. So this works out really well for a damageless run. But that did waste some time, the fact that I saw that text bubble again, because talking to him more does not give you more laurels. You cannot have any more than 4. You can have 8 if you get another item that increases your max capacity, but that's not happening in this run because it's not worth the time. Okay, so the boss coming up here... Okay, so this boss can do one of two things. She can either, like swing down and try to, like, hit you, or she can just stand up and then, like, shoot projectiles down that, like, explode. And if she does the projectile thing, that's really bad because she can't be attacked. So if she just, like, hovers in the middle of the room at the top and spams fireballs at you, that's, like, wasting a lot of time. You want her to do the thing where she swings around. So in terms of a speed run, like, you don't know how much time you're going to lose here because you don't necessarily know what she's going to do after you get the initial whip hits on her. But if you use the golden knife from death, you can just stun lock her before she has a chance to even get up to the top of the screen. And although the timing for maintaining the stun lock is pretty tight, if you pull it off, you don't have to even worry about the chance of a time loss from the fireball attack. So that's why I went to the trouble of killing death, even though I didn't have to for the run technically. Because it turned this boss that would otherwise be a big, like, potential time swing if it misbehaved, into just, like, I just have to get the timing for the knife. So I think that was a good call on my part. The other thing, though, about that is that now that I've successfully executed that, I'm going to be really nervous for the rest of the run, because that timing, again, it probably didn't come across in the footage, but the timing on hitting her with the first knife, and then the timing on maintaining the stun lock is very, very particular, and it's very easy to mess up. I go out of my way to kill that guy, because if you leave that bone thrower alive, then he can throw bones at you while you're up here on this platform at the bottom of the stairs. Which is not what you want. You do not want bones hitting you from underneath the floor. But that's what you will get if you don't kill that guy. So that's why I did it. Explanation concluded. So there's the last oak stake. The reason I went back... So I'm kind of 1 oak stake ahead because I bought 2 in the second mansion, then bought 1 in Brahms, and then So I came in here with one. The reason I bought another one is because the oak stake vendor in the fourth mansion is way out of the way, and basically if you can avoid getting the oak stake from that guy, you absolutely should. So even though it is a little bit of a pain in the ass to like walk back up there and talk to that oak stake vendor, it's nothing compared to how long it would take to get the oak stake in the fourth mansion. And the reason I'm calling the last mansion the fourth mansion is because that's like it's the fourth mansion you encounter in the game, technically. This one's technically the fifth, but I don't think anybody does this one last. I actually have heard that there's like a specific subcategory some guy invented called like intended route, where like you have to do all the mansions in order, which is an interesting stipulation. That's like the thing about Simon's Quest is interesting is when you give yourself these interesting like stipulations and restrictions, and like how do you work around that. I think there's a lot of really interesting, yeah, this is where I jump over the fireball. There's a lot of really interesting like problems you can kind of create for yourself to solve if you do that kind of thing. But I don't really like the idea of doing intended route because it means you don't have the fire whip for the fourth mansion, which means that things die in 2 hits instead of 1, which is annoying. The thing is that, like, I think the idea is that enemies in mansions are supposed to, like, it's expected that they'll take 2 hits to kill, because, like, the chain whip, the enemies in Brahms mansion take 2 hits to kill with the chain whip, the enemies in this next mansion take 2 hits to kill with the Morning Star, but if you're used to doing 5th mansion then 4th mansion, the flame whip is on the way to the 5th mansion. That's why you do it in that route, so that way, you get the flame whip for the 5th mansion, then you come back to the 4th mansion and you have it again. And also because the way to Dracula is to the right of this mansion, so like it just makes so much more sense to go down to the lava pool, go down to the 5th mansion, get the flame whip, clear the 5th mansion, then backtrack up here. It just like, I feel like not doing that would be kind of annoying. So intended route percent is not something I'm super interested in. I'm pretty much only interested in no hit and then 100% glitchless run, which I'll upload sometime after this. I haven't quite decided on my upload schedule. I promise you we will not be 6 months between videos again. Hopefully not for a while. Although I shouldn't really make promises. Yeah, there's a whole other... much like the second mansion, there's like a whole other area of this mansion that you just never see in an optimized route because you know where to go. Because in an optimized route, you would come in here with an oak stick to avoid going to the merchant, and then in the second mansion, there's nothing in the rest of the mansion except for the very, like, direct linear area from the door to the, to the orb. This was probably not... So I swapped to Dracula's Nail for this, because Dracula's Nail lets you break blocks with your whip. Probably not necessary. You can just do this with the holy water. But this is a little bit faster, and it's probably worth the time you spend menuing. Probably. Yeah, I'm playing super scared. You can jump over that golden skeleton. Let me go back. You can jump over this guy, but if you go immediately, but I was so like nervous at this point that I just waited for him to walk, then I dropped down and killed him. And they're going to see some other like pussy-ass gameplay in the last stretch here. But the good news is that the menuing is almost over. I put the shield on here, then the golden knife, and now it's time for what I call the victory stretch, or the victory lap. This last, like, stretch of outdoor areas from the last mansion to Dracula's castle. It's super fun to go through and just kill everything with the knife, because you don't have to worry about your heart count anymore. You can just, like, spam it on everything. Yeah, stopping and then jumping on these guys is not necessary. I could have kept going, and I could have continued, like, just kept on moving, and it would have been fine. Well, it wouldn't have been fine. It would have been a tighter, like, timing check, but because I'm scared and I'm playing like a bitch, I did not do that. This is also where, but this is where the golden knife really comes in handy, because this is nighttime and it's the end game, so these enemies have a fucking ton of health. They take 2 hits to kill even with the flame whip, as you'll see here. That one didn't die after 1 hit from the flame whip. But fortunately the golden knife stuns, and it also does a gigantic amount of damage. So instead of killing things with the whip, you're pretty much just killing things with the knife. And I want to highlight something here. So my plan is this. My plan is jump, and then kill those top 2 green salamanders with the whip, then pause, block a fireball from the salamander on the right, and then throw a knife. So whip once, whip a second time, and only one of the salamanders has died. So I have to whip a third time, then I throw the knife, because I'm still used to the like 2 whip swings, then throw the knife rhythm, because I was expecting them to die in 2 swings and they died in 3. Throw the knife, fireball's coming right at me. As you can see, that little fireball on the platform. Barely dodge it by like a frame. I forget how I do frame advance here, but you'll see it. Actually, hang on a sec. Is it like shit? Darn. Let me okay, I'll just cut this out. Okay. Okay, here it is. Here it is. Okay, yeah. Look at that. Okay, so let me. So I jump, and the fireball, that is, like, that's hitting me. You seeing that? Let me go back. That is literally hitting my foot right now, but I guess the game decided that this was close enough that it didn't matter. Uh, and then again, for a second time, I barely... That one I actually dodged, so that's nice. But, yeah, that was a very stressful thing to experience at the very end of a run that I'd been trying to get for a long time. And then, just for good measure, I almost get hit by a third one. So, shoot. Okay. Let me see how close this one is, because I feel like... Come on. I feel like this one's not that close. Yeah, I'm activating the Laurel way before that thing gets anywhere near me. So it looks scary, but it's not. Okay. But those first 2 were super scary, especially that first one. So I basically almost shit the bed at the very end, but barely managed to survive. Not really what you want, but you take the run that you get, not the run that you wish you got. And here I was actually kind of expecting to not have daytime break until one more area after this. But this is good because that's actually like a perfect place for daylight to happen, because if you come into this last like gray town during nighttime, there's more, and there's like enemies spawning that you have to kill, and it's more like, you know, execution checks. You have to throw more knives to hit these little birds. So even though the fact that it's changing from night to day there means that I'm slower than I expected, it's actually still kind of good, because it just means that there's like fewer things that I have to worry about and like fewer enemies that I have to fight. So it's basically like the best possible place. If there absolutely has to be a night-day transition on the way to Dracula's castle, that's pretty much the best place that it could happen. And now it's time for the very long walk from that last stretch, that last graveyard, all the way to Dracula. Very long walk across this tension-building climactic bridge under the purple sky with the beautiful, majestic gray Romanian mountains in the background. You know, people have criticized this part of the game because it's like you all go to the ruins of Dracula's castle and there's literally nothing here. But I actually kind of like it. I mean, maybe you could argue that I just played Simon's Quests for too long and now I have Stockholm Syndrome, but like there's lots of things about Simon's Quest I really like, and this is actually one of them. The fact that it's playing this unique track not found in the rest of the game, which is especially impactful after you've been hearing like the same 4 fucking tracks for like the rest of the entire game. You hear this thing that you don't hear anywhere else, and this very long, like slow tension building, like build up. It's almost like it's like in movies, if you edit like a scene in a movie to have building tension, but it's like doing it through a video game by traversing through this area. So I actually don't really mind the fact that there's nothing here. Number one, for, you know, reasons of tension and atmosphere, and number two, because it means that I don't have to fight any more things before the end of the game, and it's fewer opportunities for me to screw up and lose the run. Speaking of screwing up and lose the run, I almost get like a perfect kill on him here, because if you time the knife stuns properly, then you will kill him before he even shows up and before the music even starts playing. But here I'm like losing the timing, and I'm like, Yeah, I was like throwing the knives too late or something, and so but I thought I was throwing them too early, so I kept on throwing them later and later. That was just a last bit. That was like a bit of like a last minute panic, because I was so incredibly nervous. But fortunately, it didn't end up mattering. It's pretty hard to screw that up if you go in with the Sacred Flame or the Golden Knife. What like real speedrunners will do in like regular categories is they'll kill him with just the Flame Whip, and they have to do some pretty insane like fast whipping to kill him. Those guys swing the whip super fucking fast. I don't actually know how they do it. But Simon can swing his whip pretty fast. It's like 20 frames between swing animations, so he can swing like 3 times a second, which is pretty fast if you can hit the timing perfectly, which I'm not particularly good at. Anyway, that's Damageless Simon's Quest, Damageless and Glitchless. The next Simon's Quest video I'll upload is a 100% glitchless run that is also deathless, which, like I mentioned before, dying in Simon's Quest is like can be important for speedruns because it's basically like a health replenish. Because it's basically a way to replenish your health because, dying doesn't like send you back at all. So that's going to be that required some ingenuity on my part if I can praise myself in that way. Some innovation on my part to like make a deathless route work like that. I mean, I'm sure people have done it before, but half of the fun for this in this game for me is like figuring out the route and figuring out the heart economy and that sort of thing. So I was glad to figure out the stuff myself. That's what was fun about it. Anyway, that's the run. That's the video. Thank you guys so much for being patient and sticking with me. Like Dracula here, I am back from the dead, and hopefully you'll be seeing more videos from me sooner rather than later. So please keep your eyes peeled for all that. And as always, of course, keep on Earth rocking. Is it over yet? Is it over? How long does this go on for? I said keep on Earth rocking. Stop. Stop. How long does this video go on for? Why did I record all this extra? I always do this. Why is this here? I don't know why this is here. I don't know why it's showing the title screen 3-4 times. What is this? Okay, there we go. Keep on Earth rocking.